We had another word in there when we put damned in, but they told me that you guys were very polite, so I should be careful in my language. But the question about what do consumers really want is a critical piece of information that you've got to have the right answer to if you want to succeed today. You know, how do you know what they want? Well, it used to be a lot easier. You'd ask them. They'd tell you. You went and did something with it. You know, the problem is, and you've heard people say this, but we have what I've come to call, you know, the bionic consumer. I mean, you know, the folks that we're trying to sell stuff to now, you know, were born hot-wired to the internet. You know, they don't have teething rings. They've got mobile devices. I was going to say mobile phone, but that's not right. And they're a lot tougher because these are folks who have the ability to talk to each other before they even bother to talk to the brand. And this is problematic. We used to be able to put stuff out, advertising, you know, persuasion. And now we can still put it out, but I don't know, they're not really listening to it, again, before they talk to someone else. So it's harder. And for all of you guys who say, you know, people armor themselves against stuff. I mean, you know, the media ecology out there is incredible. If you can find a spot that doesn't have some name or logo on it, you know, you're probably out in the middle of the woods back here. So how do you know what consumers want? Well, I'm going to tell you a story about how people did stuff and whether it was right or it was wrong. And I'm going to tell you about McDonald's. Now, part of this is that people always go, well, you know, you pick on these big guys, you know, they're really big. Maybe they send someone to your house to beat you up because you're not saying nice stuff. And the reason that I pick on big companies is because they don't have an excuse not to have done it right. They have money. So you can't go, well, I'm a small company, I don't have the budget, I can't do this. I understand it. There are stopgaps, and we can talk about that, but this is about McDonald's. I can't see. How many people here have children? Which means that you would have, they can be young, they can be old, but you had children. Okay, great. About half the people. McDonald's was looking at their stores, and they were doing a kind of inventory about what was happening and what was going on. And they noticed something. Okay? What they noticed is that now all the people that have children, you're going to identify with this immediately. Those of you who are going to have children are going to identify with this immediately. Those of you who just go in and do something, wash your hands or have a cup of coffee and watch people with families are going to know what I'm talking about. What they noticed was that the parents came into the restaurants and they bought stuff for their kids. And maybe they bought a soda for themselves, maybe they bought a coffee for themselves, and they sat there. Okay? Big pattern. And they had an idea. Their idea was, they said, look at these people. They're not eating. I mean, yeah, our margin on the coffee and the soda is really big, but imagine what we could do if we could get them to buy something. But they weren't. So they said, you know what we should do? We should find out about why they're not. And so they went out and they did research. They went to whoever the people are in here that raised their hands, that had the kids, that have been in this place, that took kids, that took nieces and nephews. And they asked them, they said, why aren't you eating something? And I fall into this category as well. I mean, this was clear as crystal Canadian water for me. They said, why aren't you eating anything? And I said, well, and thousands like me said, well, you don't really have anything I want. Fair enough. And they said, if we had something you wanted, Would you buy it? Fair enough. And me, and thousands like me, said, absolutely, no question. I swear. So they went out and they said, okay, this is really cool because we understand that what we've got, all these people who we don't have something for, we should get something for them. We had something for them, then they're going to eat, we're going to make a lot of money, terrific. And they did research, lots of research. I mean, lots and lots of research. This is my wish upon you all that you have the money that they spent on research. Okay? They did central location intercepts, they did focus groups, they did quantitative studies on the phone, they talked. They came up with stuff. The other thing is you don't hear a lot these days about primacy of product. They did taste tests. And that's critical because, you know, for the advertisers, nothing like great advertising kills off a bad product. Today, with all the selection that you have, the opportunities that you've got, if you're not satisfied with something, you just go to someone else. But I want to make it clear that the product that they came up with was just terrific. Okay? This is not a trick. It was just terrific. They came up with this hamburger that was designed for adults. How did they know? Because they asked you. And you told them. And they did it. And they called it the Arch Deluxe. The burger with the grown-up taste. Everything that you told them you wanted that wasn't there for the thin little burgers that were coming in, you know, the Happy Meals for the kids, you got. They gave you exactly what you said you wanted. And not only did they have a great product, but they backed it up with advertising. Okay? They dressed Ronald McDonald in a business suit. They had commercials with him in out on the golf course because that's what adults do. And they spent money promoting it. Back then when they did it, the budget was $100 million. It's the advertising, $100 million. I mean, doesn't that stagger your mind? I mean, are there a whole bunch of people in here who have $100 million in your ad budget? You translate that, and that's about 160 million today. And I did the math, and it's almost 200 million if we spend it up in Canada. So a lot of money, a lot of promotion. Okay? So we had a product that was what you told them that you wanted. It was absolutely perfectly great from a primacy of product perspective. They supported it with stuff. They also, by the way, just to stick with what Chris and I always, it's our bet noir, and they couponed the crap out of it. So for whatever the added price that, you know, they gave you something here, it's like almost free, you know. Just please come in and buy this. And what happened? It goes down in fast food history as one of the greatest debacles ever. Ever. I mean, you'd be hard-pressed to look anywhere in any category. Maybe New Coke matches up with this, but you'd be really hard-pressed to find something else that was so badly off-kilter. Okay, so the question is, what went wrong? Did the research? You told them what you wanted. They created exactly what you wanted. They had the distribution of the product. They had the promotion. They had the distribution outlets. What was wrong? Well, what we know, and what we knew then, and is there are a couple books that we've got. Something called the first one, Predicting Market Success. We wrote it up, and it got published. And we got a call from McDonald's, could you come out to headquarters to talk to us? Because the difference was in how they got the information. direct Q&A versus measuring emotional engagement in terms of a category, understanding what people really want, okay? And then trying to match the brand up to what they really want. Now, people go, well, you're asking questions, so that should be it, And they go, what's the difference? And here's the difference. There's a quote from David Ogilvy. So, great advertising man, great campaigns. The consumer does not behave as he says. He does not say what he thinks, and he does not think what he feels. And boy, there are a lot of CMOs out there who should have this tattooed someplace on their bodies. And it was true back then, although it was a lot easier back then, because you're dealing with a far more complex digiverse mediascape. It's a lot tougher. So what we say is direct Q&A, ask the question, get an answer. What you're going to get is an excellent answer to a meaningless question. All done according to Hoyle, all the numbers, don't care. You ask them, and they tell you, and if you act on that, you are as crazy as McDonald's was, because it's not giving you the measures that you need. Now, emotional engagement, turn the glove inside out, emotional engagement tells us what they really think, not what they say they think. Because me and thousands like me said, absolutely, if you have something for me, this is what I want. And they're just histories of this. Now, I threw that up because they wouldn't give me the full 4 hours to do the methodological discussion with you. But I do want you to understand that what we do is not just ask questions. I mean, we have to talk to respondents, but it is measuring on a psychological basis how people engage. You'll forgive me, I generally don't work with notes, but being one of the last speakers, you hear all the other speakers, and then they say things, and you write them down. Some of them I never comment on, but some I will. Ivan yesterday made a comment he was talking about archetypes and storytelling. Well, the psychological process that we use is a Jungian foundation, which is one of archetypes. Good. I didn't invent the theory. I've been telling people if I had, I would be at my island now, sipping champagne. But it's an established worldwide paradigm that's used, and we've done some really neat things to it, and you fuse that with values in a category, and you get some really nice stuff out of it. Now, just as an FYI, because I always have people later on who want to come up and talk to me about it, that's fine. We have a Brand Keys YouTube channel, and there's a little animation. If you just do Brand Keys YouTube on it, it'll come up. And there's an animation that will talk you through the process. The process, by the way, has been independently validated by everyone, so we know it works. There is on our website the Advertising Research Foundation First Opinion Review, which, to borrow equity from another brand, is the Good Housekeeping seal of approval in the research industry. There is nothing else like it, not in Europe, and apologies, not in Canada either, but it is there, and it says what they say they do. So go, look, have some fun. Actually, if you want to have fun, when you go to our website, if you do the drop-down menu under Press, there's something called What Happened, which are a series of recordings. And they're applications of some of our stuff that I write a Forbes column, and it says, this is what we said, and this is what happened. And we've got a good track record on that. We're pretty good with it. Okay, another example. It's the issue about direct Q&A versus understanding emotional engagement. So you're going to go look for a car, okay? And what we talk about, and what you better know that this is the truth, is that what all consumers are doing now, even if they're not articulating it, is in their heads, they carry around something that is the category ideal. In this case, the ideal car. It's category specific because you do not buy colas the same way that you buy pizza or the same way that you buy a car. It's entirely different. The engagement mechanisms are different, and sure, the attributes, benefits, and values are different. So beware of people bearing gifts who say, well, we have a single measure, we have this set of things, it will measure it right for you, and you'll be happy. It has to be category specific. So you've got the ideal car, and I want to just show you in terms of a mindset, okay? So this is the difficulty, is also the sense of what is it and how is it that I'm looking at the category? I mean, I just love this Ford quote because it's exactly true. If you asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. They wouldn't have said an automobile. So this is what they said. We asked them about cars. We went out, and they went, I want a reliable car. I want it to be comfortable. I want it to be fuel efficient. I'm going to come back to that in a second. And I want to spend more than $18,000. Okay? For those of you sitting out there thinking, I'm really smart, and I would have asked whether it was now a technologically connected vehicle, nah, you probably wouldn't. And even if you did, you were among only the 20% out there who are even thinking about it. But it's becoming more important, but we'll put that aside for a second. Fuel efficient. You're going to have to bear with me because I'm one of those Americans. They didn't teach us the metric system, so I'm going to do this with miles per gallon. So bear with me. This is the question that they said, well, how fuel efficient do you want your car to be? Now, this is what happens in a nanosecond inside the head. Wow, they told me that this was going to take 10 minutes, and it's already been 20 minutes. I got other stuff to do. I don't really want to. I don't want to do this. Now I can't get up and walk out. Okay, so they're asking me now about the ideal mileage for my car. I don't know. The one I get probably gets 28 miles to the gallon. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Gas prices have come down, but still, I'm not really thinking about it very much. And I know that there are the new cars out there, and they're getting 35, 37 miles to the gallon. 42. And then they add them all up, and they average it out, and they come back, and the report says, well, the ideal miles per gallon for the car would be 45 miles per gallon. But but that's not true. You guys were sitting there thinking, I want the thing on the Jetsons with the pill that you put in the car and it goes forever. I don't want to have to fill up. You would know that's what you were thinking. You don't have to admit it, but you were like, I never want to fill up again. I want it to be that good. But you weren't going to articulate that to me. And so if I told you that I had a car that would get 120 miles to the gallon, I might have to prove it to you, but you'd be thrilled, right? And it was, 3 times as much as the data told me that you were going to go with. So I do stuff according to, all the basic tenets, but asking you is not getting me the answer. Because if I listened to you, this is the car that I would have designed. I mean, you could have had it in other colors. I know, you're sitting like, I don't like red. You can have it in any color you want, but that's basically the car. My partner, Lee Benatar, and I were walking back to the hotel, and he was just, not apropos of this, just going, look at that. And there were 2 cars, 2 different brands. Couldn't tell the difference. They looked exactly the same. If I had switched out the marks on them, you would not have known the difference. So if I listened to what you said, this is the car that I would have designed. If I knew what you really wanted against that ideal, That's the car that I would have designed. Okay? So instead of going out and selling this car and creating this car and marketing this car, the car that I would have created was this, Mazda Miata. Now, interesting because, remember, you told me all this stuff, and I was supposed to listen to you, and, it's rude to call you liars, so I won't. But now we have a car that is reliable, so we're checking off one of the things that you said. If you were over 5'10", it was not a comfortable car. It was relatively fuel efficient, and an $18,000 sticker price, people were willing to pay $5,000 to $8,000 above it just to get one. And they crammed themselves in. They're like this. So, the issue is, wow, I really have to talk to my consumers and find out what they want. But most of the stuff is pretty misleading. Okay, so there are things that people won't articulate. I buy a car like that, okay? And people say, why'd you buy the car? And I probably go, well, the kids are out of college, I just needed something for the golf clubs, I was going to take it to the club. Something like that. One phrase you will never hear is midlife crisis. You will not hear babes will think I'm hot. You will not hear a container for Viagra. What you hear is a rational side description of what it is. So the difficulty is that you are oftentimes in categories where people just don't want to articulate it. You need to get below the radar. I mean, that's why the psychological stuff that we do allows us to get there. It just isn't as simple as it used to be. So they won't articulate it. And so it's really the difference between getting data and getting insights. And when we talk about emotional engagement in a bit, but what you need to know is what's going to engage people. I mean, you really need to understand what is motivating people to see your brand better than the competition. I mean, if you know that, you have got the secret. I mean, some people do it very well. The difficulty is that the system of return on investment, on ROI, is just woefully bad. People avoid it. I mean, I was going to beat up on the Tim Hortons guy with all of the citations about shares and things like that. But then he talked to me about share market and what sales were. And that's what it's about, because if there's anyone here who doesn't care about sales, then you're basically running your business as a hobby. Okay, I mean, but usually what you're looking to do is to make money. And the engagement stuff is going to tell you how to do that. And the question is, okay, so you say, well, you're so smart, does it work? We got a pretty fair record. I don't do this just out of interest. I'm just going to tell you this. I mean, people rush to the computers. We do a study every year called the Customer Loyalty Engagement Index. And it's a syndicated piece. It's a teeny bit of what we do. It looked at 64 categories, 540 brands this year. And we do it in January, and we report out in February. And there have been people who have taken this to look at. We've given them, opened the data up to them, we've given it to them. 24/7 Wall Street took the top 11. I really have to ask why they ended up with 11, but they took the top 11 brands in terms of being able to engage customers. And then they did an analysis, and what they found was that 10 of the 11 were category leaders. Because it's an axiomatic thing that if you have high levels of engagement, people are going to behave better towards you. And if they behave better toward you, you ought to make money. Pretty simple. And so we look at how brands rank out. I mean, we can look at diagnostics and things like that, but we look at just how brands rank out. And generally speaking, in things that we know we can use reliable information, like same-store sales, the stuff correlates very highly. Who was number one usually had, was very high. We added some Canadian brands. We've expanded into Canada this year, working with Cult and a number of brands. First time out, Air Canada showed up number one on the list. I think we have someone from Air Canada. You should give, yeah, well, it's your airline. I mean, okay. It's number one, for God's sake. There's even a bigger hand than that for the guy. And we also do out-of-home coffee. And years ago we added Tim Hortons when they entered the United States, and they were always at the bottom of the list. It was either Starbucks or Dunkin'. It's a weighted thing. I know that neither did Dunkin' have the kind of distribution that they had larger distribution, but it's all balanced out. And this year we brought in some of the Canadian respondents, and the guy that does our data aggregation called me at 11 o'clock at night. He says, there's something wrong with the numbers. Yeah, you got it. He goes, Tim Hortons is like way up, because you're doing stuff like you saw this, earlier today. We've never seen anything like that in the United States. So it shows you that if you are indeed able to emotionally engage consumers, you got it right. I mean, for the statisticians among you, Aquiton Capital Advisors, who does corporate valuation, and there's this big equation that our accounting firm says is entirely kosher. They looked at stuff, and they came back and they said the correlation with how we rated people on the basis of engagement, emotional engagement, and how much money they made was between 0.80 and 0.901. For those of you who do not have a statistical app on your phone, that's very high. Social scientists will get undressed and dance naked on their desks for a 0.40. So it's a really high correlation. Okay, now this is the only part of the presentation where I need you to participate. This is the audience, okay? So I'm not going to come out and ask you questions. I want to ask you to do me a favor. I need you to take a picture of me on the stage. It's okay, you can throw it away later, you can, dump it later. You don't have to keep it, although I'm expecting that you'll keep it. So I'll stand over. Is this okay? All right? I want everyone to you all have to do it. Okay. Of those, I can't see, but I don't imagine everyone did it. But of those of you who did it, who was the person in the room with the 35mm camera besides the professional photographer? No one. I mean, you wouldn't lie to me. How did you do that? Okay. We're going to go get into the Wayback Machine. We're not going to go as far back as Mr. Peabody and Sherman. We're only going to go back see, I don't have my stat app. I can't do it. We're only going to go back 13 years. Not long, right? I mean, about a decade, but it's not 1821. When what people had was cell phones. I mean, if you had a cell phone. A lot of people didn't have cell phones. They still had beepers. They still had pagers. But there you go. And we were doing some work for the company. And I want to just talk to you about, this is the definition of brand engagement. When people tell you about that people are engaged because they watch something, or they spend time on something, or that even they traded things back and forth, they're not talking about brand engagement. They're talking about engagement with some sort of platform. It's absolutely true. You can be engaged with a TV show, and you can watch it all the time, and you can record it so you don't miss it, and you can watch it when you get home from work, but that's not brand engagement. Brand engagement, real emotional brand engagement, is the degree to which anything you do as a marketer increases the perception of the brand as better meeting my ideal. Okay? I mean, is it clear? The brand is here, you did something, it moved up. The ideal's very high up usually, but you moved up. So there was some degree of brand engagement against what we call loyalty drivers. This is a sample of output. It's really easy. It's a 4-factor model. This was for cell phones. At the time, the drivers were connectivity, product design, unit size and features, and good value for the money. It's far more complex now than smartphones. Okay? And we were looking at the ideal, as expressed by the target audience, and Sharp, who was the company we were working for. And then what we did was we look and see, where is the expectation gap? What do people want, and what are you delivering? And you look at this and go, well, the money was about right, and they had everything that everyone else had, and the design was okay. I mean, what the hell did I know? This is the first time it came out. So you can be very unhappy with stuff now, but basically this was a marvel. I mean, I flipped it open, I could dial, I could talk to someone, okay? So connectivity was the issue. Now here's a bet. I'm willing to make this bet with anyone in the room. Okay, I'm telling you now, but you can do this as a bar bet, and then you'll thank me because you're going to make lots and lots and lots of money. And I will bet you, I don't know, $1,000? Want to make it 1,000? Tell you what, we'll make it really interesting. We'll make it 100,000. I'll bet you $100,000. Nah, after taxes, what is that? How about $1 million? I will give you $1 million, but here's my bet. You cannot identify, you cannot bring to me, you got to be honest, I'm being honest with you. You cannot bring me 5 people that said, you know what would be really great for my cell phone? If it had a camera. If this cell phone, this thing that I flip open and I can call anyone, which is really cool and no one's ever seen before, if this thing only had a camera, I'd be the happiest person in the world. So this stands, you go out and look for the 5 people. You're not going to find them. The problem was people couldn't articulate that. I mean, it's especially so in technology, but it's in a lot of categories. I mean, that's again, when Ivan went through the audience and he said, so what did he say? What did she say? Tell me what the feeling was. Tell me what the emotion was. And people had difficulty doing it. And that wasn't because they were stupid. And in this case, it wasn't because they didn't want to. It was because they couldn't. And if you don't think that that inability to articulate flows through everything, then you're not going to do real well with your brand. So we did drill down. And what we understood was what people were looking for when they talked about connectivity, that high number for expectation was not, let me dial the phone, it goes into space, it connected me to someone, there I go. It was personal connectivity. What did it do for me? How could I more emotionally connect with people? And going through stuff, we go, a picture is worth 1,000 words. You know what? It's too bad that we couldn't send pictures. And they said, oh, we could do that. We went, really? And they go, yeah, we got this little thing. We put it in the phone. It works. It's a camera. Yeah? So connectivity had shifted in its meaning on an emotional level. Nothing more personal than a picture. I'm going to resort to the old one. A picture is worth 1,000 words. even back then at 95 cents a minute, what the wireless companies were charging. And they were the first ones to incorporate a cell phone into their camera. Now, having said that, you know what happened 46 days later? Anyone want to guess? Samsung had their phone out with a camera, and my bet is there's no one in this room that doesn't have a camera on their phone, and I'm willing to bet that a couple of you bought it because of the camera, not so much the talking. I mean, I just saw an ad the other night on TV where it was just the camera. So, Mr. Jobs knew the whole concept of design. If you have, I mean, now you probably have everything on your phone, but if you bought an iPod, there were a lot of MP3 players out there, but he understood this emotional value having to do with design and a sense of elegance was going to push it and make it for them, and you're just not going to ask them. By the time we see changes 18 to 24 months before it shows up on the traditional research radar screen these days. The expectations are moving faster and faster. We say at the speed of the consumer, and much faster than you brands. I'm sorry, I don't mean to insult anyone. We'd like your business, but you are not moving as fast as these are. In the past 5 years, consumer expectations across categories have moved up 30%. And on average, brands only keep up by 7%, which is a really, really big gap. And that's the issue about what do you want to do, what should I do, how should I do stuff. If you can fill the gap somehow, and usually with emotional values, because the rational stuff is table stakes, you'll do better than the competition. Susan from Canadian Tire the other day said something about things mean something personally to you. People are going to behave better. We saw the sales jump, for those of you who saw the chart. And my reaction was, wow, why were you surprised? I mean, we were delivering something much better than the consumers. So to close, I mean, this is the how. What it allows you to do is understand how to create great strategy against expectations. It shows you where to focus and what to do. And the I want, what I think versus what I say, I mean, there's a big gap there. So one is that emotional engagement metrics are available to you. And the other is that it tells you what people really want, and then you can go out and you can work on filling that gap. And that will create a stronger brand strategy for you. I mean, always. It always works. And just, we were talking, we said, well, maybe we should have called this, the presentation, what do consumers really expect? Because that's the yardstick you've got to move against. And just to close and say thank you, now you know. Knowing is half the battle. Now you just got to go back and do it. And if you have any questions about it, we're here to help.